If you want to have a look at the Just Giving page, we'll give you that link later. So please check it out. This is for the Kent Association for the Blind, where I'm doing the London Marathon again, my 21st year, and I want to try and get over 100,000. So I appreciate you as an individual may not want to contribute, absolutely fine, but if you can pass it on to your colleagues within your business, brokerage or insurer, whoever that might be, that'd be really appreciated, because if we can do some good stuff between us, then that can only be good for a charity. And as we know, all the charities are finding that very, very challenging. So without further ado, let me introduce Melinda. Morning, Melinda, how are you?
There I am. Hi, Ray.
Good to see you.
And hello, Esther.
As well.
Hello, yes, we made it. Thank you so much for having us. Hi, Melinda. You know, it's the typical virtual world trying to get into a Zoom link. It seemed very straightforward. We were on the line a few moments ago.
Absolutely. I mean, with setting up these events, I'd say it's been much more hard work to do it on this basis instead of, well, look, I'll see you there and then we'll have a chat and we sort it out. So, but lovely to have you on board. So yeah, perhaps I'll just pass the whole ball over to you guys.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. Thank you so much, Ray. Thank you for having us. I'm really glad that you're kind of interacting with the session as well. We're really thrilled to be here. Melinda and I have been doing a little practice run this morning, which is why we just thought, oh, it's only a few clicks away. Easier said than done. Melinda, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's really great to see you.
Yeah, it's really lovely to be here, and hello to everybody watching from our various locations. Looks like mainly at home or in our offices, and yeah, this is a new normal for me. So doing something like this is the first time I've ever done anything like this on Zoom, and so I think we're all in a similar situation where we're having to face new situations, new scenarios for the very first time. And it's like, well, how do we cope and how do we manage? And I'm really grateful that Esther is here, because Esther is an absolute pro. You know, she's an award-winning author. She has done over 100 live events and events on Zoom in this last year. So she knows exactly what she's doing here. So I'm really glad, Esther, you're here too.
Well, we're making a great duo for you this morning, because we've got Melinda, who is she's doing her MA in psychotherapy. So she's gone from glamour model to TV personality for 20 years. And she is somebody who seriously knows what fear is like, also what it's like to fail occasionally, like we've all failed, and then to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and start again. So and also Melinda's been looking into what is fear. What is it that makes us anxious? And this has been a really anxious year all round. And so this session really is about how to cope with the next normal, some coping strategies, some coping mechanisms. We're also going to be doing a little bit of chatting in, I think if we can create some breakout rooms. Molly, you can guide me if we can create some breakout rooms so we can mix up the session, and also a little bit of group therapy, and Melinda's going to help us with her tips of how to figure a lot of this out, so you can take away some strategies and some tips that you really can tangibly use in the next few months. But the first question to you, Melinda, we are going to talk a little bit about your career, how you changed, and some of the really frightening moments, or some of the moments that might have changed your mindset as well. But my first question to you, before we start asking about anxiety for the next normal, is what exactly is fear? What is it?
That's a really good question, isn't it? Because we all know what the experience of fear is like. You know, it's that horrible feeling where, you feel drained of energy and life, that sort of aching sort of pit in your stomach, the kind of sweating and panic and often a lot of anxiety. And we're quite familiar now with what anxiety feels like. But there's a great acronym for fear, and that is false evidence appearing real. So really what that's telling us is that fear ostensibly, or anxiety, it's in the mind, it's the chatter of the mind, it's the thoughts that we're telling ourselves. But of course, our body responds in a physiological way that we have been hardwired to respond, since the beginning of time. Real fear would have been, our life would have been in danger. You're about to be attacked by a tiger. So your body goes into this big response, fight or flight or freeze. So it's understanding that that is completely normal. That is a completely normal response to have. And usually it's around nowadays, because we don't have that high level of threat of about to be eaten by a tiger. It's about doing something new for the first time. It's about facing a new challenge. It's about wondering if you're capable or able, what might it look like? So this is all fear about a future scenario that hasn't happened yet, that your mind is having this conversation about, and that your body is responding to as if it's real. So it's about understanding that mind chatter, what's going on, and how we can interrupt it.
So actually what you're saying is that fear is in the mind, and today is all about the mind and how we can cope with it. And the main message from us today, we were talking about this earlier, is don't beat yourself up if you're a bit anxious. So my first question to you is, and we're going to use the chat function here, we're going to make this relatively interactive. So thank you, Celeste. What's that? Imposter syndrome, could this be a feeling? Yes, imposter syndrome certainly could be a feeling. We'll definitely come back to that. We're going to be having a whole section for Q&A at the end as well, after we've had a bit of group therapy, discussions and story sharing. But my first question before we really get started today is, are you a little bit anxious about getting back to the office? Are you a little bit anxious, yes or no, and why? And just use the chat function there. We want to just get a litmus test here. Are you secretly a little bit anxious about coming out of this working from home scenario? And I noticed a few people were talking about how, working from home is actually, you're never going to go back. But are you secretly a little bit, oh no, what's it going to be? Or maybe you're secretly a little bit anxious about the new hybrid style of communicating. Are you secretly? So actually a lot of people are saying no, some people are. It's a simple no or yes, and maybe an explanation. So we've got here, yes, secretly I am, yes, no, I'm. Some people are going back for one day. Ray, you can probably help me out with some of the chat as well, because it's coming up at a rate of knots now. So I reckon it's probably about 65% yes. Probably you're probably a little bit anxious, but then also it's absolutely okay. A lot of people have already started going back to the office. And maybe you have decided that working remotely suits your business anyway. So you might not be going back into the office. It is really strange though, isn't it, to think about one of my clients, a global organization. I was speaking to one of the CEOs yesterday, and he was saying that they're probably not going to be in normality for another 3 years. So I don't know what your thoughts on that are. I don't know if that's come up in your conversation, Ray. 3 years of remote working or hybrid working. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of a crazy world of what we've been facing. And I think majority, are about 65% on this, on the thing, as you say. Interesting that some people worried about going on trains and, the fear factor of that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah. So today's session, Melinda and I are going to be sharing with you some well-being tips and a toolkit of when you feel a bit, I'm really out of my comfort zone here, or anxious, because this year has kind of stirred up a lot of anxiety. Well-being has absolutely been at the forefront of people's minds. We're going to be sharing some of our coping mechanisms and our tips. But first of all, Melinda, when it comes to building resilience, I mean, you have been in front of cameras, you've been in the papers, in magazines, you've had lots of people staring at you. How have you built up your resilience? Do you think that you're given, it's like an inbuilt thing that we individually have? How have you done it?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think resilience is almost like a muscle that we have to kind of develop and strengthen. And I think the number one is if where possible, is like, do not judge yourself. So if you're feeling anxious or worried about, and it's interesting that the mix in the chat, because that does reflect the different kind of personality types. So somebody who's much more kind of extroverted, enjoys being around people, going back into the office is probably going to be a wonderful thing. You know, those of us that are a bit more introverted might be really anxious about what will that interaction be like. And then there are the kind of the health and the safety concerns that are in there too. So there's a huge gamut. For me personally, so learning resilience, you know, I think the first thing to kind of recognize is that when we develop resilience, it kind of develops out of being vulnerable. So there's like this sort of weird paradox, you know, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable to take a risk. And the reality is if you allow yourself to be vulnerable and take a risk, you know, sometimes you are going to fail, you know, or fall, maybe that's a better word for it. But the resilience comes in can you pick yourself back up and carry on? You know, how do you talk to yourself about this? What's the inner dialogue like? And I suppose I faced so many new situations throughout my career, which has been bizarre and lengthy, I should say. It's actually coming up for 25 years. But I remember one of the sort of the biggest, what felt like at the time, the biggest challenges. Suddenly I kind of became famous, and it was more or less an overnight. In fact, it was an overnight situation. And within a very short space of time, I was only 27. I was working in an office. Was working for a marketing company. I was in customer service. And I'd been doing that for like 10 years. I'd never known anything but that environment, that working environment. So this was completely new to me. I had no idea what was going on. And I was offered an opportunity to host a chat show. And I was terrified and thought, you know, I have no clue what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in front of a camera. I don't know what's involved. And so the fear could have stopped me. I might have said no because the fear was strong, and I clearly knew I had no idea what to do or how to do it. But there was this other part of me that thought, but you know, what's the real risk here that I fail? Okay, well, you know, I tried. What might be the reward? Well, the reward is it could go really well. I could enjoy it. It could lead on to other things that I really want to do. So I just thought, okay, let's give it a go. And I do distinctly remember turning up after saying yes, which was the first brave step, is then turning up at the theatre where it was recorded in and sort of being ushered through this kind of, this was in Trafalgar Square, a big theatre. And the show was filmed live in front of a studio audience. So, you know, I really was kind of dropping myself in at the deep end. And I was sort of being led down this kind of the back staircase of the theatre, which was all kind of quite grimy and dark and the opposite from what we imagine this sort of glamorous world of television to be, and led into this tiny little dressing room that was just bare, all bar, you know, a wire coat hanger, a noisy little fridge, and one of those sort of plastic old school chairs. And I was just thinking, what am I doing here? This is terrifying. I thought, okay, you know, I noticed the kind of sense of panic rising, and then the producers came and called me into the meeting and told me about who I was going to interview, and I just sat there at this script meeting, and I couldn't really hear what anyone was saying because I was so terrified, thinking, how am I going to do this? And then I realized, okay, you know, at one point it was so bad, I thought, oh, what can I do to get out of this? You know, can I break my leg? Can I go and fling myself in the path of a car? And I thought, no, that is not an option here. You know, what's the worst that can happen? I thought, okay, what is it I've got to do? So as they kind of mic'd me up and gave me my feedback piece, which was the producer to tell me, you know, because it's live, when we're going to a break, when the guest is coming in, I just thought, okay, what have I really got to do? I'm terrified here of this, what seems like this huge, great big challenge ahead of me. But essentially, all I'm actually doing is talking to people. You know, all I'm doing is talking and listening. That's it. And I thought, well, I can do that. I talk to people, I listen, this is what we do every day. So why am I making this a much bigger deal? So that's how I coped, and that's how I managed, by breaking it down into these small steps. Essentially, what I know now that I didn't know then that I was doing was I was coming back to the present moment. I wasn't letting my mind take me away on this journey of misfortune and, you know, and all the possibilities of things that could go wrong. I was coming back to the moment. What do I have to do right now? Just talk and listen and respond, you know, and that I knew was manageable.
I love that. So what you're saying is, so one of our first tip of the day is, if you have what you think is a mountain to climb, a big what if, break it down into small chunks. So my question to you, I mean, maybe a lot of people, I've just been reading the chat, a lot of you are thinking, actually, this is fine, I'm not that anxious. However, venturing into the unknown, this whole year's been an unknown. So Melinda, your venturing into the unknown was, what's the worst that can happen? That's one of your coping mechanisms. So what we're going to ask you today is, what are your coping mechanisms and what are your what ifs? So think about what is the thing that you think, what if, what is the worst that can happen? What is going to happen in this next abnormal? What is your what if? Please do share your what if. So I'd like to see what if ... and share the things that you think might happen, because I think it would be really good to do this little group therapy exercise, just getting it out there in the open. What if I can't fit into my clothes after lockdown? What if I can't communicate anymore? And also, what are your coping mechanisms? Do you have coping mechanisms? Because I've got to say, I've got my own coping mechanisms, and I think some of my coping mechanisms up till now haven't been too healthy, Melinda. I'd like your comments on this. So, I mean, one of my, when I wrote the book Goodbye Glossophobia, which, by the way, you can win later on in the show, folks. When I wrote this book, it's about Goodbye Glossophobia, the fear of public speaking. I was terrified of public speaking, and my way of learning how to face my fear was to face it. My coping mechanism was exposure therapy. I don't know whether you should go straight for exposure therapy. Sounds like, Melinda, you used exposure therapy. You just got on with the job. But I used to, you know, I do like to have a few drinks on a Friday night or a Thursday night. I like to relax with a glass of wine. And I used to smoke. I used to socialize quite a lot, work hard, play hard. I used to work quite a lot. And maybe that was a coping mechanism of working and have to get my to-do list, and then you can have a drink afterwards, you know. So I used to fill my time up with being very, very, very busy. So that was probably a coping mechanism of fear of failure on my part. Does that sound familiar to you, Melinda? Is that that's an unhealthy coping mechanism?
Well, I would say the most important thing when it comes to coping mechanisms is not to judge yourself for that, actually, because all you're really trying to do is keep yourself safe, and is trying to manage what is a really difficult, uncomfortable feeling. So if we can avoid kind of judging or condemning ourselves for doing the very thing we need to do in order to manage, that's the kind of first step. So yeah, obviously, if some of those coping mechanisms that you choose, you know, maybe it's like the drinking or working too hard or being constantly distracted, if you feel that they're really not working for you anymore, if they're starting to feel like actually they're harmful, that's when you want to start looking, okay, well, what all other alternative methods could I employ? What else might serve me in this situation? But the number one thing is to recognize that all we're trying to do is just to keep ourselves safe.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot of what ifs coming in now. Now, Jane Taylor, if you're brave enough to unmute yourself, I'd love to speak to you, because I love your message. What if I go back to the office and I don't like it? I just think that's a great comment. So Jane, if you are brave enough to unmute yourself, please join us in this discussion, because I'd love to ask you about why you think you might not like it, why that's your what if. Are you going to join us in the conversation?
Hi.
Hello, Jane.
Hello.
Lovely to hear from you. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I mean, I like the idea of the hybrid working. And I said that because we've been asked about whether we'd like to go back and how many days, because the company wants to be flexible, which is great. But when you started saying about what ifs, I thought, oh, you know, what if I volunteer. I mean, I did volunteer and go back part-time at the end of the summer, and there were so few people in. I thought, well, I might as well be working at home.
Yes.
And also I'm working home alone in lots of peace and quiet, and I'd have to adapt to working again with people around on other calls, having different conversations.
Well, Jane, thank you so much for that. And please, you've got your reaction buttons below. If you can, if that resonates with you, please feel free to put the thumbs up in your reaction. Does that resonate? Does that relate? Do you relate to what Jane said? That what if I go back to the office and I just don't like it? What if this is a better way of working? That's what a lot of people are saying. Please do let us know if you can relate to that. We've also got this, mindfulness podcasts and meditation, switching off from the social media, reading a book, listening to music. I think that's a coping mechanism about just switching off. What if we lose some of the positive things that we've gained? Yes, that's a really good point. Thank you so much. That's Liz. What if we lose some of the positive things that we gained during the time? We've also got Celeste. Celeste, I know that you're very active on the chat. So Celeste, if you would like to join us for a few moments, we'd love to hear from you. Celeste is saying, hi, Celeste. And what says, I don't want things to go back to how they were. So yeah. What do you mean by that, Celeste?
I suppose, well, my situation is slightly different in that I have been offered and accepted another job during lockdown. So it's all very curious and strange because all of my interviews have been over virtually, basically. So right. For me, I'm really, really looking forward to the new challenge and I can't wait. But on the other hand, I'm also a little bit skeptical because obviously when starting a new job, that's always a very nervous thing to do, and there's lots of great things about new jobs and what have you, but it's always going to be like an additional worry to then start traveling back into London again and, meeting new people. And so for me, I mean, it's been an opportunity, but there's still a bit of nervousness about that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Celeste. It sounds like you're doing really well. I think you should give yourselves a round of applause. You got yourself a new job. Thank you so much, and please do please do add to the chat. I've got quite a lot here. What if reintroducing social interaction causes a third wave of COVID? What if? So I think what would be really good is if you have a think about your what ifs. In fact, if you get a pen and think and write them down, sometimes just by writing down your what ifs, you can start then creating strategies. And we're going to do a little practical exercise on that in a bit. I love this. Molly, what if people judge me for still being so sociable outside of work? Molly, that's a really good question. What do you make of that, Melinda? Molly's worried that people might judge her. Molly, you can join in if you like. If you feel like you can unmute yourself if you want to join us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think because me personally, like you said earlier, I like going out, seeing my friends. If day festivals happen again, I'll be going to them, I must admit. I'm scared then going back into the office, people will know what I've been up to at the weekend and be like, oh, she might have it, or or that kind of attitude, and be a bit nervous around me.
Yeah, what I liked about your comment is about being judged. Melinda, you've got thoughts on this about what you've been judged, Melinda. You've been judged, you've been written about in the papers, and people are actively quite nasty, have been mean in public about you. But this fear of being judged, that's quite a normal thought process, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's completely normal. I really understand what Molly's saying there. There's a fear of what might other people be thinking about us. What if it's negative? So that's an anxiety. So it's first of all recognizing that, because that might not be the reality. That's the fear. So the fear is, that's what our mind is telling us, but it's about always coming back to the reality, and that might not be the case. And if you found that it was the case, if you found actually, because we can't please everybody, can we? People are going to have different views and opinions. So there may well be that you have that experience. What this comes back to is sort of having this kind of faith and trust in yourself, actually, in your own judgment, that you're doing, you know, what's right for you, what is okay for you. And that way you can sort of start to let go of some of the judgments of other people, because you're never going to be able to control that. You're never going to be able to control what other people think or say about you. It's just a fact of life. What we can have some control over is how much power we give that, and how much kind of responsibility we take. So we don't have to give all that power to other people to make us feel bad. We can understand that they have a difference of opinion, but actually you're doing what is comfortable for you, what feels right for you. And essentially that's what matters.
And we are actually going to give you a little toolkit of how to pick yourself up, how to coping mechanisms. We've actually got some practical little exercises that you can practice in a few moments. And please keep your what ifs and also your coping mechanisms coming in. I love this from Ian Gosling. What if we tried looking at the positive aspects of life rather than the negative? Ian, you are so right, absolutely. But we are talking about coping mechanisms and well-being and stress. So the first part of this session is about, let's get our frustrations and our anxiety out there and let's talk about it. Absolutely. I think you'll walk away from this session feeling on a high with positive strategies. We are going to talk about strategies in a moment, but before we do that, I've got a few questions for Melinda about the judgment and when you really have been knocked and your confidence has been knocked. And I know that you had a bit of a life-changing moment. You know, you suddenly shot to fame within a week. You shot to fame within a week, but very, very soon within that week, you actually had a huge knockback, which kind of changed your way of thinking, and it actually set you on the path to discovering the psychology behind it as well. So talk us through that, Melinda. Talk us through the judgment that you felt.
Yeah, so, you know, obviously entering into the arena of you know, kind of being known and fame. I didn't know this at the time, obviously, because it's, as I say, my background had been very normal, very ordinary. You know, I'd been working in an office for 10 years, suddenly kind of got launched into the spotlight.
With the Sun, and you were the girl of the millennium, weren't you, in the Sun newspaper?
The girl of the millennium is what they called me, and it was a big shock to the system to kind of adjust to, well, what on earth is happening to me, and what does this all mean? And being written about endlessly, so it got to at one stage, and this was very quickly, very early in, and I'm 27 at this time. Within that first week, my address where I was living, just this little terraced house in Swindon, had been given out over the radio, and my telephone number. And I had neighbours coming to say, you know, journalists are offering us money to rent a room that looks into your house. And, you know, they were going through my bins. And so the Sun put me into a hotel, and I was trying to get my head around what on earth's happened to my life. It's just turned upside down here. But at the same time, you know, it was exciting. There was new opportunities. But I had this strong experience of what it's like to really kind of be knocked back and knocked down. And that was when the Sun had asked me to fly out to LA, which I was very excited about because I'd never been to America. And I got on the plane, and we were in business class. So, you know, for me, this was just like, wow, what a treat. This is amazing. And I looked around, and on every seat, there was a newspaper. And I sat down, and I picked up the newspaper that was on my seat, and I turned it over. And on the front page was a picture of me, which was a shock to begin with. And then I read the article, and the article was incredibly painful. It was actually an article that had been written, or an interview that had been given by my mum, who was vehemently against the glamour modeling and this kind of new career that I'd suddenly picked up. And it was deeply personal. It was deeply wounding to read. And there were comments in there that, you know, were that stung. So, you know, it was like, my daughter she looks like she stuck her head down a toilet full of bleach. She's no more than a prostitute. She's dead to me. I mean, heartbreaking to read this, heartbreaking to try and take it in. And sort of the layers to this were kind of like multi-level, because not only was I trying to process this shock of reading this and wondering, you know, what's happened? Why is my mother saying these things? But what I felt most strongly was this sense of real deep humiliation and real deep shame, because yes, it was about me, but everybody was reading about it. This was public. And here I was stuck on this plane for 15 hours with all of these people around me that were reading this awful story about me. And I couldn't escape. I couldn't get off that plane. I couldn't run away. I couldn't go and hide and cry in my bedroom. I couldn't pick up a phone and call my friend. So it was really a tough lesson in learning about shame and humiliation, and how to pick myself up, how to carry on, how to develop resilience. And just to say, you know, I do have a relationship with my mum, and that was something that I was able to kind of work through and work with and come to understand in other ways. But the big lesson was this: how do you cope when you've really been knocked to the floor? And I never forget Jeremy Clarkson actually saying to me, you know, God, how do you manage when, because I would get really lovely things written and then really awful things. And I said, well, you know, because I realized that the worst thing that can happen to me is that I humiliate myself. You know, and I've faced that. I know how that feels. So, you know, what else can go wrong? And that's when it can shift into what can go right. You know, what else can go right? And that's also where I started to learn and understand about letting go of the judgments of others, because not everybody, you know, will approve of you. Not everybody will like you. I'm my own mother. So, you know, but do we stop this from being, do we allow those judgments to stop us from being who we are and being what we need to do in the world?
So, well, the good that's come out of it is that you went you went fully focused into the psychotherapy world now, and you've been doing that for 5 years. You're doing your MA in psychotherapy, but also you've figured out what is your brain doing? How do you cope with that? And also now, how do you help others? And so we've actually got a really good set of a little toolkit that we're going to share with you now. There are a few really simple things that Melinda's learned from her experiences, but also doing all her training in psychotherapy, of how to stop that downward spiral. And you don't have to have a downward spiral, it doesn't have to be a life-threatening moment. It can just be the fear we've read in the chat, the fear of failure, the fear that you might offend somebody because you've forgotten how to banter in real life. You know, that still makes you feel shame and embarrassment. And we're going to keep sharing the what ifs and your coping mechanisms as well. But now we're going to go into a bit of therapy mode, aren't we, Melinda? Because we've actually come up with 3 little exercises, because it's easy to remember. Everything comes in 3s. 3 exercises and strategies if you feel that you at any point in your life, it doesn't necessarily have to be going back to the office, but at any point when you're overwhelmed, too busy, too much to cope with, you've got family around you, you're juggling your life. If you ever feel that you need a bit of help to cope, we've got 3 strategies, 3 things that you can do. And we've actually created our own little acronym today, WFH, which stands for working from home, but we've named our little strategies after WFH. So tip number 1, our practical little exercise is I'm calling it W, what if? How can you turn your what ifs into well-being? To turn what if into well-being. So Melinda, talk us through that, the what ifs.
the what if. So absolutely, and this has been mentioned in the chat, which is, really great to see. The what if, so what if something goes wrong? What if somebody doesn't like or approve of me? But what if something goes right? So really what we're talking about here is our internal thinking, our thought patterns. So what's my number one kind of go-to tool when I recognize my mind is kind of starting up and it's telling me about everything that can go wrong, or I'm facing a stressful situation, is about coming back to the present moment. So, and again, I noticed there was a couple of comments in there about people using meditation and breath work, and this, it's absolutely the key. And if this is a new concept for some people, it might seem really bizarre, but bear with me. And if it's okay with everybody, we'll just try this little exercise of being in the present moment. So just the context around the present moment, because it might be a phrase that we've heard, but what does it actually mean? Well, that's the idea that really life only ever shows up in the present moment. So when we're anxious, it's because we're worrying about something in the future. But what's happening in the present moment, if we can always come back to the present moment, which is the only reality that ever really exists truly, because the future arrives, it's in the present moment. So this is the point in time that matters. So if we can connect to that as much as possible, then we can not only calm our kind of nervous systems, calm our bodies, quiet that kind of chattering away in the mind. But from this place, we give ourselves some space. And within that space, that's when we can have new ideas, new ways of relating. And so that's why it's so important. So here's just a little taster of how we might do that. So if everybody is happy to do this, if you can close your eyes if you want to, or you can just avert your gaze, look down, but just take a nice deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And just take another nice deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Now just continue just to breathe at a normal rate for you. I just want you to bring your attention now into the body. So just notice if you're sitting, how it feels to be sitting in the chair. You might notice the sensation of the weight of the backs of your legs against the chair, your back being supported. You might notice your feet against the floor. And just see if you can just tune into the sensations that are there. So what sensations are present for you now in your feet? Is there numbness? Is there tingling? Is there heat? Is there cold? Maybe there's nothing at all, and that's okay. Whatever's there is absolutely fine. Just notice it. And now just bringing your attention to the sensations that are in your hands. What do you notice in your hands? Are they sharp? Is there tingling sensations, prickling sensations, coolness, heat? Just notice. And all the while you're doing this, you may notice the experience that your mind starts to quieten, that the chatter isn't quite so loud. And that's because in becoming aware of what's happening in the body, becoming aware of the breath, the attention that would normally be in the mind generating all that thinking is being diverted, and it's being diverted into the body. So the body can start to calm, the body can start to relax. And the mind is not kind of telling it about all the problems that it's got to solve. And it doesn't mean that you can't use that thinking function. In fact, it improves the thinking function. It allows you to think in more creative ways. It allows you to come up with something new. But just this moment of being conscious of that breath or the sensation in your hands, this is just a way of tapping into ourselves, just to ground ourselves in the present. And you will find that no matter what is going on in life, whatever stresses, worries, concerns that are there, in the moment, everything is okay. And you can use that. You can use that question for yourself if you are in a state of panic or anxiousness or worry about something, is in this present moment, right now, is everything okay? And the answer almost always is yes, actually. So it's just a wonderful tool. And it's one that, you know, I am so grateful to have discovered. And I use it all of the time. So particularly if I'm under pressure or under stress or I'm worrying about something, okay, come back to this moment. You only need to do it for a couple of minutes. It doesn't need to be a 10, 20, half an hour meditation. It can just be a couple of minutes. You can do it whilst you're at work. Just take a breather, look away from the screen, notice what's happening in your body, notice your breath, and just allow yourself to come back. And it's really from this place and giving yourself this kind of reset that you can start to build and develop that resilience in order to kind of manage almost anything.
Thank you. So that's our first tool in our how to cope with the next normal, or how to cope with anxiety in general toolkit. The thing I love about that is because I'm an extrovert and I like to talk and fill time and I like to be busy. So for me to slow down I find it quite a challenge sometimes, but I've really started using my apps. I've got an app for my Aura Ring, which is a breathing app, the 21 breaths, which is a similar kind of, it's an 8-minute little exercise that you can do on the phone. But I love that. So that the W is what if, turn your what if into well-being and simply become present, which means just notice where you are at that moment and just take a breath. And I used to think, oh, you know, that's what yoga teachers say. And I didn't really think it was that important before, when I used to be so busy, just got to get on with my job. But I've really learnt, and I'm not always very good at getting my mind to quieten down, but I've learned that actually when you speak to high performers and you think about Olympians and you hear high performing people talk about how they get their mindset in the right place, that quiet really does reset you. It is incredibly powerful. And even when you watch, you know, your favorite dramas on television, like Billions with Damian Lewis, for example, they've started meditating. Have you noticed they've been adding it to film scripts and drama scripts? You know, the high performing billionaires, you know, they sit there meditating, because that is a really, really, it's a fantastic tool to change your mindset. Now, talking of mindset, our second tool that we're going to share today, Melinda, is all about feeling, WFHF, feeling. And it's about feeling. If you can make yourself think and feel, can you then determine the outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. So the feeling, so what we're kind of talking about here is this link between what we think and what we feel, you know, and that's crucial to recognize that recognize the thoughts that are going on in our mind, you know, be it the imposter syndrome that was mentioned at the beginning of the session, be it the fear of being judged, be it the fear of not being able to manage or cope. So this is the conversation that we're having with ourselves, and that's having a physiological response in our body. You know, we talked about that, the heart rate going up, the palms sweating, the feeling nauseous and sick. So the thinking is really connected to the feeling, and it's like, how do we hack into that? Well, firstly, by understanding, you know, its importance. And one way just to get a really quick real-time experience of the power of our thoughts is just through this little exercise. So if everybody is happy to, again, just try this little exercise. It may sound mad, but go with me. And it'd be great to know if you can put in the chat what you experience as we do this. So, okay, so I just want you again, just to take that breath in, take that breath into the nose. So just settle in to the present moment, take a breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And again, this one's quite useful if you close your eyes so that you can really focus on what's happening inside, because this is all about what happens in the body. So another breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Okay, so now I want you to imagine, picture in front of you that you've got a lemon on a chopping board. So really see that lemon in your mind's eye. You know, feel the texture of the skin, the kind of waxy, dimpled surface, you know, the vibrancy of that kind of warm, sunny yellow. Really feel it. You can imagine holding it in your hands. Okay, now in this picture, you have a knife and a chopping board. And I just want you to picture yourself, just chop that lemon in half. And as you do it, really see yourself cutting through. You may notice those bits of sort of zesty spray that spray out as you do this. You get the smell of that lemon, that really strong lemon kind of hitting your nose. Okay, and now imagine you've cut this lemon, and just imagine you're kind of squeezing the lemon, you're just tasting some of that juice. So you've got the smell of that lemon, that zingy, fresh lemon. You've got the juice that's coming out as you squeeze it. Now, as you're doing this, now notice, now bring your awareness, your attention to what's happening in your mouth. What do you notice that's going on? And you may start to notice that your body's having a reaction to this. Just this thought, just this idea. You may notice that your saliva glands have started to work. Here we go, brilliant. Everybody's saying here now, I dribbled the saliva. This is it. So, you know, can you see, even now, my mouth is full of saliva. My mouth is watering, absolutely. Caroline, that's amazing. So what you're seeing here is that how your mind is so incredibly powerful that just by visualizing something that isn't there, remember that false evidence appearing real, it's not there, there's no lemon. But your body doesn't know that. If you've thought about it, your body's responded as if it's real, as if that lemon is really there. That's why the saliva glands are activating. That's why you're getting this physiological response. So that's just a simple, quick exercise to understand the power that our thinking has over our bodies. So imagine whenever you're having these kind of stressful thoughts or these critical thoughts, that same response is going to happen in your body as if it's real. So that's why it's so important to kind of understand that power and become conscious of it and aware of it, and know, you know, what we can do to kind of interrupt that cycle and have something that is perhaps more supportive and more productive for what we need and want to do.
That is fantastic. I love that. Thank you. Pavlovian response, says James. Phil Hayes, need a gin and tonic to drop the lemon into now. Well, Phil, keep your eyes shut for the moment. Imagine that you have a lovely fizzy gin and tonic and the clink clink of the ice, and you're dropping your slice into your gin and tonic. And now you're taking a sip. I mean, we're all there. We're with you with the gin and tonic. That's a really fantastic exercise, Melinda. I think that is perfectly demonstrates. I mean, my mouth is still watering, which is really good for speaking, because when you speak, you actually do lose your saliva. So I'm going to use that for my public speaking tips as well, and for myself, because the first thing to go when you're nervous is saliva quite often. So if you imagine that you're biting into a lemon before you go on stage, you get the saliva back into your mouth. The thing that's so powerful about that is that when you are genuinely worried about a meeting, about an appraisal, a performance appraisal, when you're going to a pitch or you're going to speak to the exco, something that is really stressing you out, being able to imagine and visualize it going well. So turning the what if in it goes well strategy. So you're just getting your mind to think, actually, I'm going to be standing there smiling, looking confident. I've got my first line. I know what my message is, and visualizing you succeeding is exactly what we've just done there with the lemon. You can make it happen. Again, when you speak to high achievers and sports people, they visualize, and it really isn't just a trend to say, oh yeah, visualization. It really does work, doesn't it? We've just proved it. And what have we got this? Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for writing in the chat. Okay, so we're going to do one more practical tip now, and then we're going to have a bit of group therapy before our open Q&A, where we can go into all kinds of subjects to do with well-being, to do with celebrities we've met, because we've both interviewed quite a few, but actually it's all about well-being and a little bit of some questions about how you can cope as well. So the third tip, Melinda, our third tip really is simple. So we've got WFH, what if, the feeling, and H stands for help. Help, Melinda, help. If I'm feeling stressed, overwhelmed, full of anxiety, help. How important is help?
Help is really essential. So kind of recognizing that we all need a support structure, that, you know, that's so important. And for some people, you know, and this used to be me as well, I was used to managing and coping on my own and didn't really like to ask for help. You know, I thought I had to be able to do it all myself. So being able to kind of recognize that it's okay to ask for help, and not only is it okay, you know, it's really wonderful. It's a shared experience. Again, it's your kind of sharing that you're struggling with something, sharing that vulnerability that's where we kind of connect to each other. So it's finding support systems that work. Some really basic, simple ones for me is I know that I need to get a walk outside in nature every day, you know, even if it's for half an hour. Ideally, I'd go for an hour walk if I can. But I need that really supports me. I'm undertaking this master's research degree, and it fills me with equal amounts of joy and terror. And so what I have is just a little WhatsApp peer support group. So other people that are doing this with me. So this is maybe something that might work for people here, is that you can form little WhatsApp groups where, you know, maybe it's just with a few of you, where you just feel that you can just turn to each other just to sort of say what it is that you're worrying about, what it is that you're stressing about, what you're finding difficult, because there is that sense of having the people around you that can go, yeah, me too, I'm exactly there. And often that can be such a liberating feeling that we're not alone with this. We're not alone with struggling with something or being worried about something. So having support groups, finding out what really works for you. You know, for some people that might be, I need to exercise regularly, I need to meditate, you know, I need to be in contact with a friend on a regular basis. So it's just recognizing the value and the importance of your support structure and putting that in place, and not feeling embarrassed or ashamed to ask for that help. It's what connects us all together. So yeah, and there are many other things that we can do that we probably don't have time for. But just on that example, you saying you'd use the lemon exercise to make sure that your mouth doesn't dry out when you're public speaking. You know, you can quite easily use a visualization where you pick something. I often use this with clients and call it the safe place visualization. So that might be going into that meditative state, just as we did. It doesn't take a lot, you know, we're just pausing, we're just breathing, coming into the body, and then visualizing the place where you feel safest. It might be in your home, you know, it might be an imaginary place, it might be, you know, a beautiful beach, but wherever that is, you just see yourself there. And the important part of it is to really see the picture in as much detail as you can. So what does it feel like? You know, what do you hear? What do you see around you? And then notice where do you feel that? When you tune into that, where do you feel it in your body? You know, is it in your stomach? Is it in your heart center? You know, where is that feeling? So you're kind of finding the place for it in your body. And then you can automatically use this as like a switch. When you feel that anxiety or that worry, you can know where that's located in the body. You can create that image. And then, as with the lemon exercise, you get to re-experience that sense of safety and calmness that you feel. So that's just another little tip that nobody knows you're doing. And you can do it whenever you need to.
That was really interesting, because when you said think of the safe place, so if I say think of your safe place, think of a place that makes you feel safe, that makes you feel happy, you can't control where you choose. And I just chose my kitchen table. I'm just sitting at my kitchen table. I'm thinking, it's really messy in here. I really need to do some housework. But, you know, we're all stuck at home working from home. And it's like, is that all I could think of? And I thought, no, maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's the wrong place. I need to think of a safer place. I need to think of a better place. But is that okay? Is that okay, Doc? Am I allowed to think of my kitchen table?
You know, whatever came up, I say that's a really beautiful choice, actually, because that says something about your associations with your home, with your kitchen. You know, often the heart of the home, often it's that where, you know, we create the food that nourishes each other. It's the creative place. So if for you that's in your home and in the heart of your home, that's wonderful. Doesn't have to be anywhere fancy, you know.
Yeah, that's funny, because I was thinking, oh no, that's not good enough. That can't be good enough. My kitchen table is not very glamorous.
That will be the critical voice coming.
Yeah, I'm critical. That's my inner critic. So thank you so much. So we are going to be sending, after this, we're obviously going to be sending you our toolkit, WFH, working from home, what if and well-being, feeling, and the power of being able to think and then feel. Just by the power of by visualizing something, you can change the way that you feel, you can change anxiety into excitement, even just by thinking it through. And then we've got H for help. That is one of the most powerful things ever. I mean, peer-to-peer support, peer-to-peer help is, you know, you really do. You know, I was like you, Melinda. I never really asked for help before, because I always thought I had to be the one taking all, you know, I took the responsibility often. And in my job as a senior producer at the BBC for many years, I carried the world's problems on my shoulders for everybody, and I didn't ask for help. And I used to drown sometimes under the pressure. Sometimes we take on too much work and we get overwhelmed, and we don't ask for help. But just talking it through with somebody is really, you know, a problem shared is a problem halved. Is that true in psychotherapy terms? Is that true?
Well, it is. You know, that's what talking therapy is all about, isn't it? It's more about often really what we really want is just to be heard and understood. So if something's causing us stress or anxiety or confusion, just the ability to be able to share that, you know, kind of offload that to somebody and have it heard and recognized can quite immediately sometimes start to alleviate that sensation of the burden that you're carrying, because suddenly it's not all on your shoulders. It's being shared, it's being held by, you know, another person or potentially a group of people. So yeah, it absolutely works.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to open up the floor, as it were, to questions. Now we can answer anything. I mean, literally, whether it's well-being, whether it's confidence. I can talk about public speaking and about how to fine-tune your Zoom, if you like. Melinda can talk more about her career and some of the choices that she made and why she changed from pure showbiz to going into the world of psychotherapy. But while you're thinking about your questions and you're sharing your questions with us, I'm actually going to go back to some of the what ifs from before, so we can have a bit of group therapy, because you can start joining in with let's turn some of these what ifs into strategy, and let's see if we can figure out some of these problems together. Thank you so much for engaging with us today. It's been phenomenal, actually. So for example, this is AJ. What if relationships change at work? What if relationships change at work? What do you think, Melinda? What if relationships change at work? What would be a good way of changing that what if into a strategy or a good little tool that we could use for that?
Well, I suppose we would want to understand a bit more about what's the fear there. So, you know, what if relationships change at work? I'm assuming that, you know, if they change at work for the worse. So, what's the fear there? That maybe that you've lost a connection with some people, that you're kind of in different places, that you don't kind of connect in the same way. So that's that sort of, I guess, that social anxiety fear, isn't it? About, are we going to be okay? Because it is challenging. We're doing a massive gear shift after a year of being kind of isolated and on our own to suddenly coming back out. And it's easier for some than it is for others. Extroverts, you've got no problem.
I don't know. I'm an extrovert. I'm still scared, Melinda. I'm living in fear.
Yeah.
I still have anxiety and fear, and I have learnt to quieten my mind and to talk myself down. The thing I love about that, what if relationships change at work? To me, it's the word change. That's the thing. But what if they change for the better? Have a think about that. Have a think. What if they change for the better? Thank you, AJ. Catherine, what if offices get closed again and I have to work from home permanently? What if we get stuck at home? Catherine, what if that's a very good point. What if the office gets closed again and you end up at home again? My big what if is, what if the schools close again and my children I have to do homeschooling? Please, I don't want to do homeschooling anymore. What about that? What if the office closes?
So again, it's recognizing that's a fear, that's an anxiety. Ultimately, we can't control anything, can we? We don't know the outcome of anything. This last year has really shown us that quite powerfully. So there's something about letting go of that need to know what's going to happen, the need to be able to kind of control that outcome, because we can't. And if you can get comfortable with that, then you can get comfortable with change, and you can get comfortable with what is. So yeah, so let's take that scenario. What if it does close? Okay, then it's back to basics. It's
tier one again.
Back to taking it one step at a time, present moment. What can you do in that moment? Because you can't do anything about that if that is the situation. So really, a lot of these what ifs is about recognizing that if there's not something, it's kind of letting go of the resistance to what is. So if that is the situation, then it's about becoming comfortable with that, accepting, well, this is what it is. But also recognizing in a lot of these what ifs, there might be choice. So what if I go back and I don't like it? Just remember, there is always choice. Then that might be a signal to you that actually working from home, or the hybrid working situation might be more beneficial. So then there's a conversation, there's a dialogue, with somebody about, actually, this is the way I'd like to work. Is it possible? So it's not kind of getting yourself stuck in a narrow passageway with a brick wall ahead of you. It's coming back to the present moment, trying to connect to that kind of sense of calm, and then allowing the options to kind of open up in front of you, because there's always more than one option available. We're not trapped in black or white, it's this or this. And so it's just remembering that is the case.
So the term, let's cross that bridge when we come to it, because sometimes I delay my anxiety. I think, okay, that could be really awful, or what if that happens, but it hasn't happened yet. But if it does happen, it's going to be so awful. I'll just think about it when it happens, kind of thing. So I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Is that a good strategy, or is that denial?
I think that's a pretty good strategy, because again, it's an anxious thought. So an anxious thought is a fear about the future. It hasn't happened. It's just, what if it does happen? Well, what if it doesn't? So, so not putting your body through the stress of believing that that's what's going to happen is a really good thing to do. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, you're avoiding that, but what you're doing is you're avoiding that thought pattern. You're avoiding that way of thinking that isn't actually going to serve you in any way. So definitely that's a good coping strategy.
Because in a way, when you're worried about something, it's like if you're imagining these awful scenarios, your body is actually experiencing those awful scenarios, like the lemon juice. And then but then if it doesn't happen, you put yourself through some awful scenario, and you never had to, because it never happened. So I've got Karen here. Karen, thank you so much for this. The uncertain future, the variants, the mutations, the situation in Europe. No one wants to come to the party. You daren't go on holiday. It's like we don't know where we are. We don't know if we can go to, see each other. We don't know if we can see relatives and friends. It's uncertain, the uncertain future. That's a worry.
Yeah, it is. And, step one is acknowledging that actually we really don't know what the outcome, but also it could be okay. It could be that, that it's fine, that we get a handle on this. So again, it's looking at the evidence and looking at what is the reality of the situation we're in. Yes, your mind can take you off down that road of all, we call it catastrophic thinking, that all the worst case scenarios are going to play out. But what is the point of living all those catastrophes and the worst case scenarios and actually having to go through that stress if in your reality that is not the case? Come back to the present moment. What is your reality?
I've got here from, thank you very much, Terence, similar lines, a fear of the perception of, concerned about things like, if I buy a new car, does it look bad? What if I buy golf clubs? Do I appear extravagant? I don't know where I am. I feel guilty. I feel threatened. I don't know what to do. That's a similar one. Thank you for that, Terence. I mean, I think it's fine if you want to buy yourself some golf clubs. You only live once. You are allowed, don't you think?
That's the fear of being judged again, isn't it?
Yeah, fear of being judged.
Everything nearly always boils down to the same fears, by the way. We all have them. They're inherent in all of us. And that's the fear of being judged by others. But absolutely, why would you not want to enjoy your life to it's to the maximum, to what's available? If that brings you joy, go for it, do it, enjoy it. Why not? And there may be others that will kind of judge or criticize, but again, as we say, you can't control that. We cannot control what other people think. So it's about really, again, not looking for the validation outside of ourselves from others, but doing what feels right, what feels kind of in alignment with us.
And we've got two quite positive ones here. Thank you, Michelle and David, as well. So Michelle's saying, actually, COVID has made me reevaluate life. And, she's found that her team's been flexible. She's quite enjoyed working from home. And she's not quite sure whether she's going to enjoy going back. But if she doesn't, she's going to work from home more. Why not? I actually really like working from home, but not being forced to, particularly if there's homeschooling involved. I really don't enjoy that at all. And David's saying that he's concerned, but he's prepared to be flexible. And his advice, thank you, David, is don't look too far into the future. Take care of yourself. That's a great point. Thank you. That's brilliant, because that's really what we're talking about today, is self-care. That's something that I don't think I did in the past. And that sounds silly, doesn't it? I didn't care about myself. I really think in the past, I didn't put myself first. I didn't self-care or do any sort of well-being exercises or take care of myself. But that's a really good one, isn't it? Take care of yourself and don't think too far into the future. Is that a good strategy?
It's excellent. And that's saying the same thing again, isn't it? It's coming back into the present moment, coming back into the reality. What is it right now that you have to deal with? What is it right now that you have to face? Is everything okay in this moment? And, and that's so... It's absolutely about that, not letting the mind start worrying about all the things that could potentially go wrong. And self-care, and you're right, Esther, there will be many people that don't even know what self-care looks like, let alone feel they have a right to it. But if we can do that, it's not about being selfish. Putting yourself first and caring for yourself is not, but it's quite the opposite, actually. If you're able to look after yourself and care for yourself, then you're more available to other people, to support other people. But if you're not looking after yourself, how can you help others? It's the classic, I was an air stewardess for a while. It's the classic, make sure you fit your oxygen mask
before your child. Yeah, you put your mask on first and then you can look after everyone else.
That's what self-care is.
So please get your questions, and I've got some nice juicy questions coming up in a moment, very, very, very specific ones as well. But before we do that, there's a few, I just have to give this the nod, a few comments that have come in about Headspace, Fitbits, all kinds of apps that people have been using to do some meditation. So absolutely, so Fitbit's absolutely brilliant. I've got this Aura ring, which is kind of like an Apple Watch, but it's in ring form, and it has its own app, and it tells me how I slept, and it's got my heart rate and everything. But apps are amazing now. So yeah, Headspace. I quite like Andrew's voice, but my kids thought I might be having an affair with him. They kept seeing me going into the room on my own, and he'd go, and now it's okay. If you've got lots of thoughts in your head, it's all right. Let them come and go. My kids are like, who is that man? Why did you keep talking to that man? And it was the Headspace guy. I love the Fitbit. And what's this? The hardest thing for me learning yoga was having to lie still. Yes, lie still at the end of yoga. So everyone shut your eyes and relax. And you're thinking, what have I got to do? What time is it? What time is it? And your brain just can't go to sleep. Okay, so now we are going to go to some of the questions. I've got quite a specific one here from Kevlar. Kevlar, if you're there, we'd love to hear from you, because that's quite a good question about moving house. Kevlar, if you are brave enough to unmute yourself, we would love to speak to you this afternoon. It's 12:30 now. So Kevlar, are you brave enough to unmute yourself?
Hi.
Hello, Kevlar, how are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Speak nice and loud and clear, because it's nice to hear your voice. So you're moving house. So let's do a bit of group therapy. You're so lucky to have group therapy today. You're the chosen one. But this is a really, really good example, because for me personally, moving house, it kind of represents it represents life, and it represents extreme anxiety, right?
Yes, very much so.
How are you feeling about it?
Very anxious, to be honest. We found out that we're due to exchange contracts later this week, and therefore we've got a month less than we originally thought to prepare and find somewhere to rent. So we're
okay. So Kevlar, you're quite quiet, but I heard that you were exchanging your contracts earlier than you thought, and it means that everything's been fast forwarded. So it means now you might have to rent somewhere, but before you move your house. So I just think so Melinda, I know any sort of stressful situation, whether it's moving house, moving jobs, having children, or anything to do with family, or something to do with your home, something to do with the roof over your head. There's something to do with having to manage your belongings, and then if you have to rent somewhere temporarily, what would be your coping strategy for that?
Well, it is one of, as we know, it is one of life's biggest stressful events. It is up there with births, deaths, divorce. Moving house is right up there with those moments in life. So how I've actually moved about 16 times. So
yes, you're an expert at this.
a little bit about this and the stress involved. And again, all the same tips really relate here. They're really important. So there's a lot to do, there's a lot to think about. So how do we manage that? Again, breaking everything down into those small steps and those small stages. So that might look like, for me, I'll write lists. So I'll write lists of what needs to be done, who needs to be called, who needs to be emailed, what's got to be packed, and so that I've kind of got some order to my thinking. And then it really is about just managing what you can in that moment, at that particular time. And again, not allowing yourself to what if I can't find somewhere to rent, or what if this falls through on this day, or what if they don't get that document back on time. Try and avoid going there and go, okay, well, what is it I need to do? What is it I can do? What can I actually physically do right now? And then what you find, if you're able to keep coming back to that position, is that what you need to do gets kind of taken care of, you know. And if a problem arises, a bit like you said, Esther, you cross that bridge when you get to it. You know, the solutions will be found, but it's just trusting that. The fear is that the solutions won't be found, and it's going to be a disaster. So just keep it coming back to the present moment, keep it one step at a time, and just know that, you know, hopefully this is a place that you want to move to, Kevlar. It's not somewhere that, you know, you this isn't a kind of a forced move. Hopefully this is a move you want. And either way, that, you know, perhaps you can just, if you do find your mind going off, just think about how it will be when you're in and it's all resolved, and you don't have to do it again. But one step at a time. Don't let the mind hijack you and start taking you off into catastrophic fear about the future. Just deal with what you can at this moment.
I love that. I'm getting some lovely positive things. Thank you so much. So
yes, thank you.
Thank you thank you, Kevlar. Good luck.
Good luck.
Put your thumbs up for everyone. Give him a thumbs up saying we're with you, Kevlar, we're with you. Another tip I would have, I would offer there, because I'm not very good at moving house. We haven't moved house in 20 years. I've avoided it because I don't like moving house. I think for me, I go through quite a few, particularly with public speaking and helping people getting through their anxiety and quite extreme anxiety. Quite often it's just about thinking, you know, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. You know, we're lucky to be alive. You know, the absolute is like, it's a wonderful life. We're lucky, aren't we? You know, think about what you're lucky about today. The sun's come out, you know, we're lucky to be alive. And sometimes that can help you, because you think, hang on a minute, let me get this into perspective. And it's not because it's not stressful, because it really is stressful, but it's about one step at a time. We've got some lovely tips coming in, Melinda. Sue, yes, go on. Yeah.
I think you just made such a good point. It's not that bad. And Kevlar, I know, you know, with this experience of moving, I'm doing a similar thing. I just remind myself, okay, well, it's just an email. It's just a phone conversation. It's the big parts are you know, obviously the packing up. Yes, sure, they are big, they're physical, but the rest of those kind of transactions, they're, you know, it's a phone call or it's an email. It might be a search, a Google search, you know, if you're looking to find somewhere temporarily. So it is about, reminding ourselves, okay, that one thing is actually quite manageable. And then it doesn't feel like such a big mountain to climb.
Yes. And remember, if you were going to climb Everest, you have to get to first base first. It's everything in bases, not the whole mountain in one go. Thank you to Sue Lloyd. Remember that many of us have got the same worries. And Sue's suggesting that we make it fun. If you're going back to work, you know, make it fun. You know, you make sure that you've got your social distancing in place. But actually, you know, it's new. It can be fresh. So that's really good. Terence, I'd love to hear from you. We've got a couple of moments left now. Terence, because you've been quite busy on the chat here. Terence, I love this, you mentally needed to put a shirt and tie on. So Terence, if you're brave enough to unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you. Are you going to unmute yourself? Terence, calling Terence Fisher to the microphone. Are you there? Are you still there, Terence? Anyway, Terence said he needed to put a shirt and tie on rather than stay at home. It's really helped him. Oh, hey, Terence, are you there? Hello, because you've been quite busy on the chat, I've noticed. So Terence, you're looking very smart today. So tell us, this is how you make yourself feel better, and this is your coping mechanism.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely went through a period when not preparing myself for work was an issue, so I needed to break out of that. So for me, that was get yourself dressed up and make sure you get to your desk. That was a significant moment for me, to be honest.
Yeah, you know, quite a lot of people have talked about wearing something bright. Thank you very much for your comments on, you know, putting something bright on, put something on to make you feel good. Can I ask you a personal question though? Are you dressed completely are you suited and booted from the waist down? Oh no, we're not gonna get told off, are we? For Ray's gonna tell me off. Very good. Let's give Terence a round of applause. Melinda, that's a whole other strategy, isn't it, about getting dressed up?
absolutely brilliant. And, you know, and that's such a great example of these little things, seemingly insignificant things we can do that sort of really kind of puts us in a different mindset, shifts how we feel. And, you know, Terence, I completely agree. I had to do the same thing because I got so comfortable just wearing my pajamas literally all day long. That in order to kind of shift my gear kind of out of home life and that kind of state of being into my kind of professional world, changing my outfit to kind of reflect what I had to do really helped. It's like these little markers that delineate the space when we haven't got that space so clear at home, when our work environment and our home environment have merged. You know, normally we'd make that transition as we're driving into the office. We're kind of separating home life to work life. But here we're having to deal with it all in one. So finding a strategy like dressing for work is one way of creating that space for yourself. So brilliant. Absolutely.
I think we should call it, why don't you do a Terence Fisher? Let's do a Terence Fisher and get suited and booted and from the waist down, which is amazing. It's how great that you can still fit into your trousers. I love this from Chris Collier. He says, yes, I've enjoyed putting on an outrageously bright tie and going into the office, and it really annoys the moaners. Who are the moaners? So that's the judges, the people that might judge. So turn up in your outrageously bright tie. I love that. Joanna, thank you so much for this. My mum said, don't try and eat the whole elephant all at once. I mean, who eats an elephant? It's like eating the frog. Eat the frog. Don't eat the whole elephant. You know, start with the trunk. How disgusting. I love that. Don't eat the whole elephant at once. Joanna also writes to-do lists. So writing to-do lists helps all of my worries, gets out of my head. So you go down to the manageable tasks and then you can cross them off. And it's very cathartic. Go on, Melinda.
The other thing I love about that, I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but when I write my to-do lists, and I do lots of those, sometimes I just leave them. And then when I come back to them, you know, you find half the stuff's done. So half the stuff I was really stressing about and worrying, you know, it's been done. It just gets done in the kind of natural course of time. So a lot of what we put on there is just about, trying to offload the kind of the stress and the worry that we might forget something. So it's another good coping strategy for sure.
Okay, in a moment, we're going to run a competition. You can win a signed copy of my book, Goodbye Glossophobia. But before we do that, I just wanted to share the manager, just a couple of to-do list comments. People are like, yes, manage to-do lists. I've got a new strategy now, which is a done list. You can actually write a list of what you've done. So you can actually do the little box and tick it as you go, which is very, very therapeutic. It's really good because rather than 38, and yes, I did have a 38 point to-do list at one point, I can actually have 10 dones, and it's really, really brilliant. Thank you. Sarah's still in her pajamas. It's okay. We won't ask you to come. We won't ask you to put your camera on, Sarah, unless you want to share your pajamas with us. Okay. So all you got to do, if you want to win my book, all you got to do is email me, and I'm just going to put it here in the chat. My email address is Esther at. I'm just going to put it here in the chat. Is that right? Here, oh no, it hasn't come up. Esther at estherstanhope.com. It's my email address. Esther at estherstanhope. Oh no, it's the wrong thing's come out of the chat. Oh no, sorry about that. I've just put in the details of this phone call. I don't know how that happened. Right, go. Esther at estherstanhope.com. That's better. Right, I'll put my email in the chat. All you have to do is cut and paste my email. And if you write tips, please, I will send you some more tips. And I'm going to pick out a winner in the next half hour. So you've got to be quick. It's called Goodbye Glossophobia, Banish Your Fear of Public Speaking. It won the highly commended short business book of the year. And it's got lots of graphics and tips and strategies. And a lot of them are in alignment with what we've talked about today, because it's about instant anxiety busters, whether it's slow breathing to stop you from sweating and shaking, or how to get your head in the game quickly, how to tell a story, how to hook your audience in. It's got loads of tips. It's got 31 chapters, stories, and tips from lots of different speakers as well. So if you want to win that, get your emails in quickly, and I'll pick out a winner, and I'll email you within half an hour. So make sure you've got my email address there. I think I've put it in the chat. Right, I accidentally sent you the details of the thing. Molly, did you get my email okay in the chat? Molly's looking out for the technical things. So on that note, thank you so much for your kind comments. We've got people saying thank you, energizing, great. They're really grateful for us sharing our strategies today. Melinda, you shine. You are so bright, and I love the fact that you're wearing. We're kind of got our colored combo here, but thank you so much for sharing your stories, your mindset, your inspiration about how to change your mindset, and being really honest and open about your personal stories as well, and why. And I know that spurred you on to become to start training in psychotherapy, because you suddenly realized, wow, this is hard coping with this, and I really appreciate that.
Life can be really challenging, for lots of us, for all different reasons. It is the kind of nature of life, isn't it? So yeah, I wanted to learn how to make more sense of it, how to get through it more easily, how to have more joy and more peace, and yeah, becoming a therapist was something I always wanted to do, and it's a great joy. It's actually a job that I feel a real privilege to sit with people and hear what's happening in their lives and where the struggles are, and working together to kind of move through that and see those sort of transformation take place. So it's a great honor to do this work, and it's been really wonderful to be here with everybody, and loved how involved. I know this is such a challenge on Zoom. We're not all in the room together, we can't all hear and see one another, but it's so nice to see everybody engaging, and lots of wonderful comments there. So
thank you so much. And right now I can see some of you on my screen. If you're looking at your camera now, if you can give us a wave, so I know that which means thank you, Melinda, thank you. Give us a little wave. Thank you very much. I've just taken a screenshot of that. So I will be sharing that with you, Ray. And Ray, thank you so much for inviting us. Ray Johnson, you're an absolute star. Molly, you've been brilliant behind the scenes as well.
That's brilliant. So stay on, guys, because I'll be summing up a bit. But yeah, it's really good. And thank you so much as well for what you've done. I must say that, I mentioned before I go out running, and I must say that that's the first time I felt my feet for probably a few months. So thank you for that.
You found your feet, Ray, finally.
What a beautiful metaphor.
Yeah, he's found his feet.
But I think one of the key things we mustn't forget, and I know you touched on it, but we're not on our own. Talk to your friends that you used to be at work, maybe share that stuff. And by the way, I put my tie on because look for something to look forward to. So I'm looking forward to being a liveryman of the Worshipful Company of Insurers. That's been delayed from last year, and this is their tie. So something to look forward to. So I think that's brilliant. So thank you so much again for everything you've covered. I think it's really good the way you covered off the well-being, the feeling, and the help, and I think that's superb. And I think that's really going to be very, very useful to our members, and will be shared in good volumes in that respect as well. So
thank you for all the comments as well. Thank you for the engagement.
Yeah, brilliant. So today, it's our first virtual conference. We're going to be sending out questionnaires to you all. If you could give some feedback, then we'll share you with the links and the slides and everything that we mentioned earlier. We've covered a lot of good stuff, a lot of ground. So we spoke earlier with Sarah from Allianz, who talked about the way to partnership and the way things are changing and adapting as an insurer. And then again with David, with his team, his staff, the way he's working with, customers or, as a broker to go and see them. And I think that's very important to keep that relationship going. Very, very good. And then of course, Damien, about the test case and about business interruption, the way those markets will be changing. A very interactive, good Q&A session, I thought. And then of course, followed by both Melissa and Esther, which we're very grateful again. So I think we've covered a lot of ground in that respect. So thank you again to the speakers and everyone that's been with us today. thank you for coming along. I just want to say thanks to our sponsors once again, so Sutton Winston, Allianz, the Aston Lark Group and Flint Insurance for helping and supporting the Kent Association for the Blind, and we've had some interest on that, which is really good today. Just to let you know that I think I mentioned earlier, the winners. So the winners in the marketplace will be those companies, and I know it seems, pretty straightforward, but it is factual, that the companies that will embrace their staff, like we've been talking today, is a superb example, connecting, working together more closely on an individual basis, working with your teams, and just making things better despite all of the, I'll say the word crap COVID we're going through, but things are coming the right way, and between us all we can make that better and that journey easier, and I think that's so important. The companies that will talk, and whether that be staff or colleagues, also don't forget that we've got CEOs in the room. Talk to your management team, talk to your directors. Sometimes they get missed. We've found some of that with our work with the Chamber of Commerce. So that's one area. The other part is liaise and adapt and change with your customers, and make sure that you connect with them all the way through and continue to do so. Even your suppliers, and something we haven't been able to touch on, which I think we will do next time, is the environment. And another part, which will be good for everyone's well-being, is maybe reach out to the community and talk to them about how you could do things to support the community. And if you're stuck for anywhere to go, maybe try Rotary or Help the Aged. Those people need help, and they sometimes don't need money, they just need a helping hand. So maybe that's another good interaction to help with well-being. But other than that, we nearly wrapped up. Our next conference will be the 5th of April 22. Who can believe 22? It's crazy, isn't it? But I'm sure by that time I'll be sitting in the room or standing in the room talking to you and saying we got through it all, and I think we will. So that would be good to look forward to. It'd be interesting to have your feedback with the questionnaire if you would like to do a hybrid event as well, and I think that's probably the way we go. But other than that, just want to say thank you to all our presenters. Thank you to you for coming. Wishing you the very best in the future, and I'll finish off with you to enjoy your perhaps Deliveroo thing that might be coming along for your lunch. So take care, guys. All the very best. Thanks for attending.